y'all, and welcome back to Lantern Creek Farm. Also, P.S. y'all, through this video, you're going to see me sitting in this chair in the shade. The sun is horrible out there. It's very bright, and if I was out in the sun, you all wouldn't be able to see me. So, yes, I'm stagnant and sitting in one spot. I hope it's not too boring for you all with these big white walls, but we got to do what we got to do. So, I appreciate you all watching, and I hope that you enjoyed the video. Today, we're going to talk about feeding animals and being able to feed animals with what you produce on the farm in case of an emergency. Alright guys, when we're talking about being able to decide which animals you want on the homestead or on the farm or on the farmstead or whatever you want to call it, you want to be able to make sure that you are first and foremost financially able to take care of the animals. But secondly, you want to make sure that you're going to be able to, with the animals that you choose to have on your farm, you're going to be able to provide a food source with them. Let's say if financially you can't afford it anymore, or say something was to happen in the world and you weren't able to get the feed that you could from the store. Alright guys, I will say that this is not a topic that I would be an expert on. This is not something that I've ever had to put into practice, thankfully. We do buy our feed at the store. Primarily, our hay is bought from a local farmer. But what I'm talking about is buying animals specifically, or having a minimum amount of animals that if something was to happen, you would be able to provide a food source for these animals. So what I'm trying to get at is when starting a homestead or a farm, you want to look to the future and see, one, what you would financially be able to afford, or if you wouldn't financially be able to afford to feed your animals, what would be some other sources that you could use to feed your animals for little to no cost. This also comes down to the type of animals that you have on the farm, and how many of those animals you have of each. So we have a little over 100 chickens on the farm. I can say with utmost confidence, if something was to happen financially, or something was to happen and we would not be able to get a hold of feed, there is no possible way that we would be able to feed over 100 chickens on our farm. But that is for my husband's hobby, his breeder chickens. So if there was something to happen and we would not be able to financially afford them, that would probably be one of the first things we would have to consider, is probably getting rid of animals that were not bringing any financial gain or would be able to produce something on the farm that would sustain us in any way. With that aside, and that being said, the three main animals of this farm, aside from my husband's hobby, are the rabbits, the big stock chickens, and the Boer goats. Starting off with the rabbits, like we did on the last video, with their dual purpose, their multi-purpose use, would be that rabbits would probably be one of the first that we decided to stay. They can be fed really cheaply. They can eat grass and only grass. They need some forage, but that could be gathered up pretty quickly through trees or out of pasture. And along with that, they produce a protein source, a meat source. So they would probably be the first to decide to stay. They also produce fairly quickly and in large quantities, and so they would be a very easy and cheap food source to keep on the farm. The second animal that would be the cheapest and the next biggest food source on the farm would be the chickens. Just like the rabbits, they could give us a food source along with them producing a protein source outside of just their bodies themselves. They produce eggs, and they eat pretty cheaply. Our chickens are free range and pasture, along with they eat chicken scraps and garden scraps. So they can eat pretty cheaply if you choose for them to. The last animal on the farm, like I said with the dual purpose animals, we chose rabbits, we chose goats, and we chose chickens because they're all a dual purpose animal. Now goats eat a little more expensive right now as far as comparing them to the chickens and the goats, but if we ever came across a situation where feed was gone, we couldn't buy it in the store, or we couldn't afford it, goats can eat pasture, and they can eat hay, which is pretty cheap. Now, in a situation where they couldn't eat hay, I would assume probably we have enough pasture here. It's a little, it's probably, it's a 3-acre farm, and they could probably pasture a little under 2 acres. And even 3 acres in total, and I don't think we would have to supplement them at all with grains or feed or anything like that. Maybe a little hay in the winter, but that would be pretty much it. And I think that would probably depend on how well we managed our pastures as well. So goats is another animal that if it came down to it, that they could eat pretty cheaply. On top of that, the breed of goats that we have are a meat goat. They're not a dairy goat, although if I worked real hard, I think that we could get enough milk for a milk source, depending on which doe it was and how big of an udder that they would produce and how many babies they would have a year that would cause them to produce more milk. So anyways, goats are also an awesome animal to have on the farm that can be very low cost and low maintenance when it comes to having a food source, or if you come into a poverty situation. Alright guys, I hope you liked this short little video talking about why we chose the animals that we chose on the farm. I'd say you all probably got a little gist out of why we chose the animals we chose in the dual purpose animal video, and I will try to link that below, that way you can watch that one if you haven't seen it. But it's always very important to have animals on your farm, not only that are dual purpose for the farm, that have multiple purposes for the farm, but also that can be very low maintenance. Now, Boer goats in general are not a low maintenance animal. Honestly, if it came down to it, I feel like we would probably have a better grasp or a better outcome when it came to goats if we had maybe another type of meat goat, like a Kiko or something like that. I've done videos on Boer goats specifically, but goats in general, if you have a larger goat that's going to produce a lot of meat, is kind of the gist of what I'm going at. Boer goats are probably not a recommended breed that I would recommend, for very low maintenance. But Kiko is another breed that goes along with Boer goats in the United States that is something that is heavily produced for meat along with the Boers, and they are more low maintenance than the Boer goats. But that aside, it is very important to have and produce animals on your farm that are hardy, and we are working towards a more hardy animal on the farm. We started off with not so hardy animals, but we are working towards more of a hardy animal on the farm. But it also is very important to have animals on your farm that in case of a financial situation, or in case, let's say, the market fell out of the grain or something like that, or let's say a heavy drought out where we get our grains. I think we get them in the West and stuff like that for our area, or the Midwest. I'm not quite sure, but we get them not in our state. And so if something was to happen and they were to have bad droughts or something like that in those areas, and there was a grain shortage or something like that, would our animals be able to survive and make it without having the store-bought food source? Guys, I hope that this video was helpful and educational, and helped you in some way, shape, or form. We are not quite, like I said, we're not quite there. I really want to work towards more hardy goats and things like that. Probably we definitely have to minimize our animals, especially 100% chickens if it came to a situation where we had to. So we're not quite there, but I want to put this video out to be helpful and to encourage you and to give you something to think about that maybe you haven't thought about before. This is something that I've thought about. I don't know if my husband has actually, really thought about it. We haven't really discussed it much. I lean more towards the sustainable side of things, where my husband is more of a free bird and he rolls by the seat of his pants. It's not a bad thing. He has taught me how to roll with the punches a little bit more than I maybe would have before. So he's made me a little bit more open-minded about a few things. But this is something that I just wanted to throw out here to get you all thinking, to get the brain pumping, to see if you all on your homesteads and farms have ever thought about the sustainability of your animals in case of a situation like this. So I appreciate y'all watching. I appreciate y'all hanging out, and I hope that we can see you on the next one. We'll see you later. Bye.